All right, welcome to lesson 17.4. This one is on addressing climate change. Learning objective is that you should be able to identify solutions to climate change. So, success criteria, what that means is that you should be able to describe the kinds of actions that could reduce the release of greenhouse gases. So, with addressing climate change, two big things we look at is energy efficiency and green energy. Improving energy efficiency has the double impact of reducing how much carbon dioxide is released because we're not burning greenhouse gases and using as much. And then it also is conserving the shrinking supplies of energy resources. So right now we are very dependent on fossil fuels, but if we can make things that are more energy efficient, meaning we don't use as much of that resource, then we're extending how long we'll have it. It makes sense to increase energy efficiency even if global warming is not a concern. Another solution or way to address climate change is a tax on the amount of carbon individuals and corporations release into the atmosphere. People don't want to pay for things, so if you make them pay for their pollution, maybe they will pollute less. This would increase the cost of fuels and stimulate a demand for fuel-efficient products because the cost of fuel would rise. It's like gas being $5 a gallon versus $2 a gallon. If it's $5 a gallon, you're going to want a car that gets higher miles per gallon. It would also stimulate the development of alternative fuels with a lower carbon content and generate funds for research in many aspects of fuel efficiency and alternative fuel technologies. So going back to energy efficiency and green energy, increases in energy efficiency and reductions in greenhouse gas emissions are likely to have the important related benefits that could offset the cost. So it does cost money to start doing these things because it's increased technology. So greater energy efficiency would lead to reduced air pollution, which would result in lower healthcare costs and time lost from work, because air pollution does affect our health and increases insurance and hospital costs as well. A study in China determined that there are about 1 million premature deaths per year in China alone due to air pollution. Greater energy efficiency also reduces the need for new power plants and related infrastructure. Switching to green sources of energy, such as wind, solar, and hydroelectric, as well as nuclear, do not release carbon dioxide and lead to reduced carbon dioxide emissions. So we know that forests store carbon. So biomass is important in this as well. So since carbon is an important component of living things, what happens to biomass has a role to play in determining atmospheric carbon dioxide. So forests consist of many long-lived tree species that can tie up carbon for centuries because there's literally just carbon in that tree. So as long as the tree is living, it's holding onto carbon. Preserving forests slows the rate of the increase of atmospheric carbon dioxide because those forests are removing a lot of that carbon dioxide. This is particularly true for tropical forests since they are the last remaining major unmodified forested areas in the world, and they are very efficient at capturing carbon dioxide. Tropical forests go through a lot of photosynthesis, and that's where that carbon dioxide is being brought into the plant. The burning of tropical rainforests to provide farm or grazing land is, putting that at risk. This adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and it also removes the trees, so it decreases that rainforest's ability to remove carbon. A commonly cited estimate is that 10% of the additional carbon dioxide entering the atmosphere is due to deforestation. Planting trees has also been supported as a way to reduce atmospheric carbon dioxide. Long-lived plants like trees will tie up carbon for longer periods of time than grasses and other short-lived plants. Critics argue that this approach will provide only a short-term benefit. Eventually, the trees will mature and die, and their decay will release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere sometime later. The U.S. Department of Energy has concluded that relying primarily on already proven technology, the United States could reduce its carbon emissions by almost 400 million metric tons, which is huge. This is enough to stabilize us at 1990 levels, not back to where we would naturally be, but at a safer level. Alternative energy sources like wind, solar, and hydroelectric, geothermal, and nuclear power do not release carbon dioxide, and so they can replace current fossil fuel energy sources. Fossil fuels currently provide nearly 90% of the world's energy, even though we have other energy sources available. Converting to a greater reliance on non-fossil fuel energy sources will require a great deal of new construction and technological improvements. Prevent carbon dioxide from being released into the atmosphere. We can do this by having like filters where the pollutant is coming out. So carbon dioxide can be reacted to produce solid carbonate materials. Limestone is calcified carbonate that could be stored in landfills. It can be captured and stored underground as well. And then technological changes that come with the cost will be paid by the consumer. So it does mean an increased cost for us. Government policies that stimulate the development of these technologies will be needed, meaning government is kind of making that happen. And then this is an international concern. So we need international agreements, which we have had. The first is the Montreal Protocol, which is dealing with chlorofluorocarbons. It was established to phase them out. We've talked about how dangerous they were and what the effect they had on the stratospheric ozone layer. Then there was the Kyoto Protocol, which was dealing with greenhouse gases. This was in 1997, and it asked countries to limit their greenhouse gas emissions below 1990 levels. But economically developing countries did not have requirements. And then there's the Paris Agreement, which the US was in and then out and in again, and this established goals to cut greenhouse gas emissions. It was a follow-up to the Kyoto Protocol that happened in 2015. It was meant to help prevent that 2 degrees Celsius increase. The strive was to keep it below 1.5. And we were doing this by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, so each country had to publish their plans. All right, and then the last one is the Madrid Climate Change Meeting. This took place in 2019. It was to establish how countries' contributions could be measured, and establish the carbon credit trading mechanism, which was not achieved. Ooh, not last one. Actual last one is the Kigali Agreement, which was dealing with chlorofluorocarbons and hydrofluorocarbons. So chlorofluorocarbons and hydrofluorocarbons destroy stratospheric ozone. We've talked about that before. And this was an amendment to the Montreal Protocol. And it phases out the production of hydrofluorocarbons because chlorofluorocarbons had already been phased out. All right, that was the end of this lesson. Lots of new information. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one.